All right, Krystal, what's on your radar?
Well, a new poll out of Florida has some pretty ugly news for Joe Biden, particularly with regards to his performance among Latinos. So in Miami-Dade, a county which makes up about 10% of the overall population of Florida, Biden is dead even with Trump among Latinos and is significantly underperforming Hillary Clinton's 2016 numbers overall. So here are those numbers. The poll conducted for the Miami Herald found that Biden leads in Miami-Dade by 17 points, but that is a much smaller margin than the 30 points that Hillary Clinton won that county by. The main reason appears to be massive erosion among Latinos. In fact, 2/3 of poll respondents who chose to conduct their interview in Spanish actually preferred Trump. And as I'm writing this, a new NBC News Marist poll of Florida just dropped with Biden and Trump tied up in the Sunshine State. The reason for Biden's poor performance, according to senior political editor Mark Murray, a huge underperformance among Latinos. In fact, in this poll, Trump leads the Florida Hispanic vote by 4 points. That is a dramatic shift from Hillary's 27-point margin among the same group. I should remind you, of course, that Hillary's stronger performance among Latinos was not enough, ultimately, to win her that state of Florida. So this erosion should be setting off major alarm bells over at Biden HQ. Guess that Ana Navarro Latino outreach strategy isn't paying all the dividends that one might hope. Now, a significant part of the Florida Latino story is those famously conservative Cuban voters consolidating around Trump. One strategist I spoke with told me that Biden was relatively undefined among Spanish speakers, and so the Trojan horse for socialism messaging might actually be landing. The Trump campaign has also made a longer-term concerted effort to message to Cubans and to Venezuelans. That does appear to be paying off. One of the big secrets of Latino outreach is, actually doing Latino outreach. But the Biden campaign's Latino problems go a lot further than just the Florida Cuban community. Polling has consistently found that while Biden is outperforming Hillary among seniors and among white college-educated voters, he is flat with young voters and a bit down with black voters and has lost significant ground with Latinos. So what is going on here? Something very simple. It's partly arrogance. Latino voices were barely present at the DNC, and Latino stories were limited almost exclusively to immigration. Rather than the early and often approach to communicating with this diverse community, the Biden campaign is simply late to the game, apparently enthralled with the magical powers of the white moderate. What's more, typically after a hard-fought primary campaign, the victor will bring on board the top players from their vanquished opponent, not only as a show of goodwill, but more importantly, to assemble the most expertise and have the benefit of consult from those who've been outside the groupthink bubble. People have thought really hard about your own candidate's weaknesses. Now, to the best of my knowledge, the Biden team has not brought on one single Sanders campaign operative to help advise them on how to reach a key demographic where Bernie, I will remind you, enjoyed overwhelming support. The fact that Chuck Rocha hasn't gotten a phone call from the Biden team tells you everything about how crushing the left is more important to these people than actually defeating Trump. Instead of listening to the people who have done this well, the Biden media team instead is run by longtime aide Mike Donnellan, who, by the way, helped Senator Nelson lose in Florida thanks to a failed Latino outreach strategy. Donnellan is also reportedly the person who crafted Biden's Restore the Soul of the Nation messaging, which seems to be landing just fine with seniors and especially with white suburbanites. But it doesn't appear to be landing whatsoever with Latinos. A strategist I spoke with explained that backwards-looking restoration message just didn't connect with an aspirational and forward-looking community. And if you think about it, Latinos overwhelmingly backed Bernie Sanders based on two things: a successful effort to connect Bernie's immigrant roots with the community, turning him into T.O. Bernie, and a bread-and-butter economic message on healthcare and on wages. According to the strategist, Biden does have a family and faith story that would land, but they simply haven't been communicating it. And as we all know, the bread-and-butter issues have been virtually absent. Seems to me that it is long past time establishment Democrats go back to the drawing board on their Latino assumptions and really their minority assumptions in general. As Sean McCarthy pointed out on Twitter, according to the polling, after this whole awful Trump era and his comments about Charlottesville and S-hole countries and all the rest, Biden has actually increased his share of the white vote, and what is keeping Trump in the game at all are gains among people of color. It's almost like all of this hollow identity politics signaling has nothing to do with actually appealing to voters of color and everything to do with stroking the egos of white suburbanites and convincing them that they're good allies. On Latinos, though, in particular, everything we have been told by the wise pundit class has turned out to be dead wrong. In 2016, we were told that Latinos would overwhelmingly reject Trump due to his virulent anti-immigrant rhetoric. Instead, he actually outperformed Mitt Romney. We were told that Bernie's Democratic Socialist message would only land with young white college kids, but he ended up driving up the score with Latinos running a populist economic campaign. We were also told that Cubans would absolutely reject Bernie Sanders because he said some vaguely complimentary things about Castro's education program. He actually ended up edging Biden out in that community in Florida. We were told that Biden's moderation would be the perfect recipe for winning this same group in the general election. But as of today, he's actually getting trounced. Look, maybe it doesn't matter for 2020. Maybe the white people are going to ride to Biden's rescue. But Trump has no realistic path back to the White House without winning Florida. And Biden's team has effectively handed him a lifeline. Biden's failures with Latinos, his inability to embrace the successful aspects of Bernie's campaign, and his obsession with white moderates are all serving to keep Trump in the game. And Sagar, it is so ironic that after all of this, the one thing that may actually rescue Donald Trump, and I think Biden is still on track to win. Let me be clear.
Right.
Trump has to win Florida. Biden has other pathways to victory. But the one thing that's actually keeping him in the game is rising support among people of color.
Yeah,
How ironic is that?
I tweeted, I was like, the political class is not ready for a narrow Trump victory driven by working class Latinos in Florida. I was like, I don't think they would be able to handle it. And this is the logical consequence of that strategy. It's very risky. What we said here over and over and over again, which is that actually you have this pool of generally untapped, not necessarily loyal partisan voters who will go to whomever they perceive as working best towards their economic interests. Now, that's also what suburban voters have done, but they're very fickle. Maybe they won't turn out. Maybe the law and order stuff will get there. There's no evidence that it currently has. I'm not saying that it will, but realistically, what this demonstrates is that the Biden campaign's strategy is probably not a long-term one for Democrats if they want to win a broad national election, just because of the amount of gains that it is going to leave for Republicans. Like, look,
so
the Trump campaign, it's not running a Class A operation over there. Let's just say that. If you're a competent person, as I would like to see, and you were looking at these numbers, what would you be doing? You wouldn't hire Chuck Rocha, but you basically copy everything the man did, buy as many Spanish language ads about the Trump trade war in China, and blanket the city of Miami and Arizona and Tucson and all these other places with it, and be like, the president is fighting for your jobs, good paying you. That is what I would do.
And here's the thing is they actually have been doing a lot of that.
Yeah.
I mean, the Trump strategy overall has been a mess, and they had to pull ads because they don't have much money left and all, but they have actually had a consistent messaging strategy towards Latinos and especially to these Florida populations for actually years now.
Yeah.
And this is one of the things, I mean, when we've had Chuck on this show repeatedly and you ask him, what's the secret? He's like, the secret is you actually speak to them.
Yeah, just talk to them.
That's literally there's...
And don't talk about immigration.
Right.
Don't just talk about immigration.
I mean, immigration is part of it, but it's not the number one issue even. And so there's this caricaturish view from Democrats. And what is remarkable, I mean, they hardly even, after all of the high school, Spanish flexing on the debate stage, they barely had any Latino voices at the DNC. Yeah. And not that I think that just putting up some Latino voices is going to shift the game, but it shows you where their focus is. It shows you who they're actually trying to win. It shows you the way that they're thinking about this election. And so that was a remarkable departure. And basically the Biden team has been sort of asleep at the switch, sort of assuming that this population, I guess, would just show up in droves, and doubling down on this, let's get the white people really excited strategy, which, again, it might work for this election. I think it probably will. But for the long term, the coalition that the Democratic Party is supposed to represent of these rising ascendant groups, it's a really bad direction.
And electorally, very risky. So Nate Silver actually put out a tweet, because there was a tight poll that came out of Florida yesterday, which was actually tied between Biden and Trump. Should note there was another NBC poll that put Biden up by 9 points. So who the hell knows? But let's say Trump does win Pennsylvania the way that he did last time, and Trump wins Florida. Biden would have to win both. He would have to clinch Arizona and the New Hampshire second or whatever.
The Maine second.
The Maine second, sorry, whichever would put him over. And even then it would be 270 to 269. So very precarious. And if the polls are as wrong as they were in 2016 and Trump is going to win Pennsylvania and Florida, it doesn't seem realistic that Biden would be winning Arizona in that scenario. So again, very precarious. And he's assembled a coalition which he really needs these people to turn out to vote. Now, all indication says they are. They're donating oceans of money. They came out, like in droves to vote in the 2018 election. But it's a crazy time. Who the hell knows what's going to happen?
And here's the thing. If Biden was just doing as well as Hillary Clinton did among Latinos in Florida,
yeah, he'd be fine.
With the white gains that he's made, he'd be cruising to victory there, and it would be over for Trump. I mean, it is if he does not win Florida, there's some theoretical paths, but they are very precarious. Basically, if you don't win Florida, Trump does not win. So he could have shut the door on Trump, essentially, by just performing as well with Latinos as Hillary Clinton did. I do want to say, look, some of these sample sizes are relatively small. Nate Silver also made the point that there is some indication that polls tend to underestimate Latino support of Democrats in the same way that they underestimate white working class support of Republicans. There is some indication in that regard. But we've been tracking this here for a while. It is a very consistent dynamic of Trump overperforming his 2016 performance among Latinos and Biden underperforming. So when you see it reoccurring in poll after poll after poll, that tells you there is something going on there. And I may have to watch some MSNBC today because I am so curious what their explanation is for how this is happening, why this is happening. So far, all I've seen is like, well, it's a small sample size, and that's not really what's going on.
Sure.
I really want to know if they are grappling with this whatsoever and what it says about the type of politics that they espouse.
Marist poll that you're pulling that from is an A+ rating from 538. So good luck arguing all about that.
All right, Sagar, looking forward to your radar. That's next.